Welcome, valued viewers, to Old Age Wisdom. Have you perhaps sensed a growing distance between you and your adult children recently? Are your conversations over the phone becoming noticeably shorter, and are opportunities for visits seeming fewer and farther between? It might be surprising, but the root of this shift could lie concealed within the very language you employ when interacting with them. Today, we are exploring 5 specific types of phrases, often uttered unintentionally, that older parents might want to reconsider using with their grown children. Please pay close attention, as the second phrase we discuss possesses such potential for harm that it could, in some unfortunate cases, lead to a significant breakdown in communication. If you find value in reflections like these, consider liking this video or subscribing to Old Age Wisdom to join our community focused on navigating the later years with grace. Drawing from extensive experience in guiding families through precisely these kinds of communication challenges, I have observed repeatedly how seemingly harmless expressions can quietly erode the foundations of relationships. By the conclusion of our discussion today, you will possess a clearer understanding of which potentially detrimental phrases are best removed from your conversations. More importantly, we will explore alternative ways to express yourself that can help mend and strengthen those invaluable family connections before misunderstandings deepen. Consider the experience of Eleanor, a 72-year-old woman from Cleveland who found herself perplexed and saddened by the increasing emotional space between herself and her 3 adult children over the preceding few years. Despite her sincere and loving intentions, family get-togethers had acquired an underlying tension, phone calls felt curt, and her invitations were often politely declined. Eleanor felt a deep sense of heartache, almost as if abandoned by the children she had poured so much of her life into raising. The turning point for Eleanor arrived during a family counseling session attended with her youngest daughter. The therapist gently highlighted particular patterns of speech Eleanor habitually used, pointing out how these phrases were inadvertently creating distance with her children. Eleanor was taken aback. She genuinely had no inkling that her words were perceived negatively or causing such unintended hurt. These weren't overt insults or harsh criticisms. Rather, they were common expressions many parents in their later years use without fully grasping their potential negative impact. Once Eleanor became aware of these specific phrases and consciously worked to replace them in her dialogues, the change in her family dynamics was truly remarkable. We appreciate you being part of the Old Age Wisdom community. If our content resonates, please do take a moment to like this video or subscribe for more insights. Within a mere 3 months, her children began initiating calls more frequently, visits became more common occurrences, and the palpable tension that had marked their interactions for so long started to dissipate. Today, I want to share with you the precise types of expressions that nearly fractured Eleanor's relationship with her children, the very same turns of phrase that might be subtly undermining your own family ties at this moment. Let us delve into these potential relationship pitfalls and, crucially, learn more constructive ways to communicate instead. The first toxic phrase type sounds like this: "After everything I have done for you." Have you ever felt a pang of being unappreciated by your grown children and perhaps allowed this sentiment to escape your lips? The impulse is certainly understandable. However, relationship psychologists caution that this particular expression represents one of the more insidious forms of emotional manipulation parents might employ. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a respected family therapist, clarifies that using this phrase instantly frames the parent-child relationship in transactional terms, almost like keeping a ledger. When parents deploy the phrase, "after everything I've done for you," they are essentially maintaining a scorecard, Dr. Martinez notes. This approach inadvertently transforms the natural acts of parental care and sacrifice into a form of debt that children realistically can never fully repay, thereby fostering feelings of resentment rather than genuine gratitude. Consider Arthur, a 76-year-old retired professional from Phoenix. He was genuinely puzzled as to why his son seldom returned his calls anymore. During a rare dinner engagement, Arthur once more referenced the significant expense he covered for his son's college education, remarking, "After everything I've done for you, the least you could do is check in with me once a week." This prompted an unexpected outpouring from his son, who revealed that these recurring guilt-inducing comments had been steadily pushing him away over the years. Arthur was deeply distressed to realize that his efforts intended to foster closeness were, in fact, having the opposite effect. Guided by a family counselor, Arthur learned the value of expressing his true feelings and needs more directly, without resorting to guilt. A more constructive approach might sound like, "I genuinely miss hearing your voice and catching up. I'd truly love it if we could connect more regularly. Would perhaps a brief call on Sunday evenings fit into your schedule?" This method clearly communicates your desire for connection without burdening your children with a sense of obligation or implied manipulation. It is helpful to remember that the decision to become a parent was yours, not an investment strategy anticipating specific returns. Your children do not owe you repayment for the care and support provided during their upbringing. By consciously removing this type of phrasing from your vocabulary, you foster a much healthier dynamic grounded in mutual respect and affection, rather than perceived obligation. The second potentially toxic phrase type is, "Your spouse is turning you against me." This particular accusation is widely identified by family relationship experts as exceptionally damaging, almost like relationship poison. When you imply that your child's partner is negatively influencing them against you, you are not merely criticizing their chosen spouse. You are also implicitly questioning your child's own judgment, autonomy, and ability to manage their relationships. Dr. James Wilson, associated with the Family Systems Institute, elaborates. This statement effectively forces adult children into an impossible choice between demonstrating loyalty to their parent or to their spouse. It's a lose-lose scenario that generates immense stress. Consistently placing your child in this difficult position will almost certainly strain and could potentially sever the parent-child bond. If you're finding this discussion helpful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Old Age Wisdom for ongoing support in navigating family relationships. Consider Carol, a 68-year-old grandmother residing near Seattle, who learned this painful lesson firsthand. She frequently insinuated that her son's wife was the reason he wasn't visiting as often, using comments such as, "I suppose Emily doesn't approve of you spending quality time with me," or, "You certainly never behaved this way before you were married." To Carol, these remarks might have seemed relatively minor or harmless observations. What she failed to recognize was the significant strain these comments, relayed by her son to his wife, were placing on their marital relationship. The situation escalated dramatically when Carol openly blamed her daughter-in-law during a family event, accusing her of stealing her son. That very evening, her son sent a message explaining that they needed some distance from the relationship. That period of distance lasted for 18 challenging months. During that time, Carol missed out on holidays, birthdays, and tragically, the birth of her first grandchild. It required professional counseling intervention and heartfelt apologies directed to both her son and her daughter-in-law before the process of reconciliation could even commence. Nowadays, Carol makes a deliberate effort to be supportive of their marriage instead of inadvertently undermining it. A more constructive alternative to blaming your child's spouse might be, "I value both of you immensely. I'm still navigating the best ways to be supportive of your family unit. Could we perhaps explore finding more opportunities to connect that work well for everyone involved?" This approach demonstrates respect for their partnership and acknowledges the primary importance of your child's adult relationship, as it rightfully should be. It fosters collaboration rather than conflict. The third phrase type to be mindful of is, "In my day, we did things differently." This seemingly harmless, often nostalgic remark can carry an unforeseen critical undertone that may significantly impair your connection with your adult children. Communication specialists point out that this phrase tends to establish an immediate comparison, often implying a competitive dynamic between generations. It subtly suggests that contemporary methods or choices are somehow inferior to those of the past. Dr. Sophia Chin, a professor specializing in intergenerational studies, observes, when older parents frequently invoke their day, they risk unintentionally creating emotional distance. This phrasing can position them more as critics than as supportive allies, especially when the conversation touches upon topics like parenting styles, career paths, or lifestyle choices. Thoughtful communication builds bridges, not walls. Consider George, a 74-year-old grandfather from Nashville. He felt confused about why his daughter would become somewhat defensive whenever he offered suggestions related to childcare. He often prefaced his advice with statements like, "In my day, we didn't fuss over all these complicated safety regulations," or, "Back in my day, children showed more respect towards their parents." George's intention was genuinely to be helpful, drawing upon his own experience. However, his delivery inadvertently made his daughter feel criticized and perhaps inadequate as a parent. After his daughter eventually mustered the courage to explain how these comparisons made her feel, George consciously adjusted his communication style. He started posing questions about modern parenting approaches with genuine curiosity, seeking to understand rather than critique. He showed sincere interest in the reasoning behind changed practices. The underlying tension between them gradually eased, and remarkably, his daughter became more open to occasionally considering and even incorporating some aspects of his more traditional wisdom. Instead of emphasizing generational divides with "in my day," perhaps try an approach like, "I'm genuinely interested in understanding your approach to this particular situation. If it might be helpful, I could share what seemed to work for me when you were growing up." This phrasing presents your experience as a potential resource or option, rather than asserting its superiority. Remember, the primary aim should be fostering connection and understanding, not proving one way right and another wrong. When you demonstrate respect for your adult children's choices and autonomy, they are far more likely to value your perspective and even seek out your input voluntarily. The fourth challenging phrase type involves absolute statements like, "You never visit/call me." While such declarations might reflect a genuine feeling during moments of loneliness or disappointment, relationship counselors strongly advise against them as they can be destructive to relationships. Employing absolute terms like never or always typically distorts the reality of the situation and almost invariably puts your children on the defensive, prompting them to refute the claim rather than hear the underlying feeling. Dr. Michael Ramirez, a family psychologist, explains absolute statements such as "you never visit" corner adult children. Even if they visited just the previous month, the parent's statement implicitly declares it insufficient or invalid. This pattern fosters resentment and can create anxiety surrounding future interactions, as the child may feel their efforts are never truly acknowledged. We truly hope these insights from Old Age Wisdom are proving beneficial. If so, a quick like or subscription helps us continue creating content for you. Consider Margaret, a 70-year-old widow living in Chicago. She often expressed disappointment to her daughter using phrases like, "You never call me anymore," or "I haven't heard a peep from you in ages," even if they had actually spoken within the past week. Consequently, her daughter began to anticipate their interactions with a sense of dread, knowing that regardless of the frequency of her calls, it likely wouldn't meet the implicit standard needed to avoid these kinds of accusations. The situation shifted when a close friend suggested Margaret try keeping a simple log or journal of all her family interactions. Margaret undertook this exercise and was genuinely surprised by the results. She discovered that, in reality, she received communication from her daughter, whether through calls, texts, or social media updates, about 2 to 3 times each week. The core issue wasn't necessarily the frequency of contact, but rather Margaret's perception and perhaps unmet expectations. Working collaboratively with a therapist, Margaret learned strategies to acknowledge and appreciate each connection positively, rather than dwelling on the perceived gaps between interactions. She started expressing gratitude for specific instances. "I really enjoyed our chat last Tuesday," or "Thank you so much for sending those adorable photos of the grandchildren." Instead of resorting to broad accusations, try expressing your feelings and needs directly. "I truly treasure the time we get to spend together. I've been feeling a bit lonely recently, and I would love it if we could perhaps find a regular time to connect that fits comfortably into your schedule. What might work best for you?" This approach articulates your emotions and desires without resorting to blame or exaggeration. Recognizing the numerous demands on your adult children's time, balancing careers, their own families, and other responsibilities helps maintain a balanced perspective. Acknowledging their efforts cultivates a much healthier and more positive dynamic than focusing on perceived shortcomings. The fifth toxic phrase type is particularly sensitive. "You'll regret it when I'm gone." Using one's own mortality as a tool for emotional leverage might seem like an effective way to capture attention or compel compliance, but experts strongly caution that it often backfires, actually pushing children further away emotionally. This type of statement dangerously combines guilt, manipulation, and fear into a potent mix that erodes trust and fosters significant anxiety. Dr. Elizabeth Parker, a gerontologist and family counselor, explains, when elderly parents invoke their eventual passing as a form of threat, they risk creating a traumatic association surrounding their death. Rather than motivating increased connection, these statements frequently trigger avoidance behaviors, as adult children instinctively try to shield themselves from the emotional manipulation. It conditions them to associate contact with discomfort. Take Walter, a 78-year-old grandfather from Denver. Whenever his children were unable to attend a family function or happened to disagree with his advice on a matter, he would often resort to saying things like, "Well, someday when I'm no longer around, you'll wish you had listened to me more," or "You're going to regret not spending more quality time with me when I'm deceased." His children gradually began to limit their interactions with him, finding the constant emotional blackmail deeply unsettling and difficult to bear. The dynamic began to change only after Walter's eldest son finally addressed the issue directly, explaining honestly how these recurring comments were negatively affecting the entire family. Through professional guidance, Walter came to understand that he was expressing legitimate underlying fears, perhaps of being forgotten or feeling insignificant, but was doing so in a highly destructive manner. He learned techniques to communicate his genuine desire for connection and validation directly, rather than resorting to veiled threats about his mortality. Instead of weaponizing your eventual absence, consider expressing your feelings more constructively. These family moments together mean the world to me. I truly hope we can find ways to create more wonderful memories together in the months and years ahead. This approach clearly conveys your desire for closeness and shared experiences without resorting to manipulation or invoking guilt. Remember, strong, enduring, quality relationships are fundamentally built upon foundations of mutual respect, genuine affection, and deep understanding, not on feelings of obligation, fear, or anticipated regret. Your children will naturally want to spend time with you when they enjoy your company and feel emotionally safe, not because they are coerced by the fear of future remorse. Focusing on making present interactions positive is the most powerful way to ensure cherished connections. The hidden peril associated with these phrases lies in how commonplace and deceptively innocuous they can often seem. Most older parents who find themselves using such expressions genuinely harbor no intention of causing harm. They honestly believe they are simply voicing valid concerns, sharing wisdom, or making casual conversation. However, neuroscience research provides insight into why these phrases can be so detrimental. Dr. Ephraim Jonathan Hayes explains that when individuals hear these types of accusatory, guilt-inducing, or manipulative statements, especially from loved ones, their brains can activate a stress response similar to that triggered by a perceived physical threat. Over time, repeated exposure to this emotional stress can lead to the development of an avoidance pattern. Essentially, the brain learns to limit contact with the source of the distress. This neurological response helps explain why many adult children might gradually pull back or reduce communication frequency with parents who habitually employ these challenging phrases. It's often not a conscious, calculated decision to abandon their parents, but rather a subconscious, natural psychological defense mechanism against ongoing emotional discomfort or pain. The truly encouraging news, however, is that simply recognizing these patterns is the crucial first step toward changing them. By making a conscious effort to identify and replace these potentially toxic phrases with healthier, more constructive alternatives, you can begin the process of repairing strained relationships almost immediately. It's about fostering understanding, not assigning blame. Transforming long-ingrained communication habits certainly requires effort, particularly when certain responses have become almost automatic over the years. Here is a practical, three-step approach often recommended by family therapists to facilitate this change. First, cultivate self-awareness. Start paying closer attention to the moments just before you might use one of these phrases. Ask yourself, what underlying emotion is prompting this? Are you feeling lonely, unappreciated, perhaps fearful, or misunderstood? Identifying the root need or feeling is key to expressing it more directly and healthfully. Second, introduce a pause before speaking. When you recognize the impulse to utter one of the problematic phrases, consciously take a deep breath. This brief pause creates space to intentionally choose a more constructive alternative phrasing. It might feel slightly unnatural or awkward at first, but consistency and practice will make it feel more genuine over time. Third, focus squarely on expressing your own feelings and needs directly, using I statements whenever possible. For instance, instead of resorting to "you never visit me," try articulating the feeling behind it. "I've been feeling a bit lonely lately, and I would genuinely love to see you more often." This conveys the same essential concern, but does so without placing blame or making potentially inaccurate accusations. Consider Patricia, a 75-year-old grandmother from Boston, who successfully revitalized her relationship with her 3 adult children primarily by eliminating these 5 phrase types from her interactions. Following months of noticeable strain, she made a firm commitment to altering her communication style. Initially, her children might have been somewhat wary or skeptical, observing the change. However, as Patricia consistently demonstrated these new, more positive patterns of interaction, the emotional barriers between them slowly began to dissolve. 6 months into this conscious effort, Patricia's daughter pleasantly surprised her by proposing they take a weekend getaway together, an idea that would have seemed highly improbable during their previous communication dynamic. Patricia later reflected, "It wasn't that my children didn't love me. They simply found the emotional weight of my previous communication style too difficult to consistently bear. Now that we've identified specific phrases best avoided, let's shift our focus toward positive communication strategies designed to nurture and strengthen those precious family bonds as we move forward. Make it a habit to express appreciation regularly. Actively notice and verbally acknowledge the ways your children do make efforts to connect or show they care, rather than primarily focusing on perceived gaps or shortcomings. Respect their boundaries. Fully recognize that your adult children lead complex lives with numerous responsibilities and priorities that extend beyond their relationship with you. Show genuine interest in their lives, their careers, their families, and their passions, without implicitly demanding they place you above all other commitments. Strive to make your interactions enjoyable. Aim to be the parent your children genuinely want to talk to and spend time with, not the one they feel obligated to merely check in on. Share positive news from your own life, inquire about their interests, and consciously avoid letting every conversation devolve into a list of complaints or ailments. Offer support without imposing judgment. Position yourself as a potential resource your children can turn to when they seek advice or need assistance. But crucially, respect their final decisions, even when their choices differ from the recommendations you might have offered. Embrace flexibility regarding traditions. Instead of rigidly insisting on maintaining every single historical family practice exactly as it was, collaborate with your children to create new traditions or modify existing ones in ways that accommodate everyone's evolving lives and current circumstances. Find solutions together that work for the family as it is today. By actively implementing these positive strategies while simultaneously eliminating the potentially toxic phrases we discussed, you cultivate a family dynamic firmly rooted in mutual respect, genuine affection, and authentic connection, moving away from dynamics based on obligation, guilt, or fear. In summary, we have explored 5 types of phrases that can inadvertently harm relationships with adult children: implying obligation, "After all I've done for you," blaming their spouse, making critical generational comparisons, "In my day," using absolute statements, "You never call," and leveraging mortality, "You'll regret it when I'm gone." We've also discussed healthier alternatives focused on direct expression of feelings and needs, respecting boundaries, and showing appreciation. Remember, fostering strong family bonds in these later years often requires conscious effort and a willingness to adapt our communication. Awareness is the vital first step. If you found this discussion on improving family communication insightful, please show your support by hitting the like button. We invite you to subscribe to Old Age Wisdom for more content dedicated to enriching your golden years and strengthening vital relationships. Please feel free to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Perhaps which phrase resonated most with you. Sharing this video with friends or family members who might also benefit could make a real difference in preserving precious connections. Thank you for joining us on Old Age Wisdom.